So if investors, asset managers, asset owners, if they consider ESG data, they will see a couple of crises earlier than others.
En lille times kørsel uden for Londons finansielle centrum ligger Henley, en af tidens mest ambitiøse business schools. Skolen er med stormskridt på vej til at blive en af de toneangivende inden for forskningen i ansvarlige investeringer. I 2013 gjorde Henley et mindre scoop, da den tyskfødte professor Andreas Hoepner og hele hans team blev lokket til universitetet.
Our overall conclusion is that investments using intangible assets on average perform about equivalent like investments in other styles, value, growth, momentum, contrarian. But quite importantly, there's a substantial distribution, which means that the better ones can realize very nice outperformance, and they can also realize even better risk management opportunities.
Ansvarlighed er et område, mange forskere indtil nu har set skævt til. Men resultaterne fra blandt andet Henley er nu ved at vende op og ned på opfattelsen af, hvordan man opnår de bedste afkast.
One of our studies, which is probably the best example, is when we studied the firms announced as most sustainable by the World Economic Forum. There were 100 firms announced as most sustainable every year, and there was different firms every year. So this allows us to study the performance of these firms in the year before they announced, when only subscribers to the data provider would know about it, and the year after, when the whole market should know about it. So in the year after, there would be a clear market inefficiency if we found any outperformance. And interestingly, we find that in 10 industries, there are 3 industries which significantly outperform before the announcement, and there is 2 industries where there is still a significant outperformance after the announcement, and that is highly interesting. We were hoping to find an outperformance in the industry of consumer discretion. This consumer discretionary industry is the one where consumers buy products with a discretionary income. They don't have to buy them. It's more like luxury goods, and really reputation matters a lot. So we're thinking being more sustainable helps in this industry. The award will help. So in the year before the award, there'll be an outperformance. And we find that. There's significant outperformance, very material as well, 6-7% in the consumer discretionary industry. However, after the announcement, this outperformance goes away because analysts seem to adjust for it. And so the award was an advantage, but there is no substantial outperformance because there's too much competition for that piece of information. Interestingly, we find an outperformance which stays in the industrial sector. In the industrial sector, there seems to be a win-win situation where you basically have 2 advantages. First, you can enhance your reputation by getting your industrial company greener, and B, you can save a lot of energy and you can reduce your costs. So that outperformance is consistent in the year before and the year after. And the year after, if I would have any money, I could invest myself in it. So it's really public information. And the third industry stunned us most. That industry was the one where we really thought, okay, now we have to do a lot of extra tests. If we did anything wrong, we tested monthly, weekly data, anything. The finding was very consistent, very persistent, and that was healthcare. So we basically found that the most sustainable healthcare companies, as announced by the World Economic Forum, outperformed significantly in the year before the announcement, and even more so in the year after, up to 10%. And initially you think, what does sustainable development or sustainability have to do with healthcare? But then you look in it, and the rating itself underlying the most sustainable company announcement is an ESG rating. And it basically captures intangibles. And healthcare is an industry where research shows that trust is absolutely essential. It's a so-called credence service where consumers cannot assess a service until long after they consumed it. And I come from a family of doctors, but I still wouldn't go and take a pill of a pharmaceutical company if I didn't trust them. I wouldn't take a surgeon and let them do surgery on me if I didn't trust them. So healthcare is probably the industry where trust is most essential. And it really appears as if sustainability criteria, communicating to be a good corporate citizen, can help to build this trust and leads to an outperformance which is under focused by markets, so it stays on even when it's publicly known information.
Forskningen viser, at verden hele tiden flytter sig, også de sociale og miljømæssige forhold. Og for at skabe de bedste afkast, må man hele tiden være på forkant.
Dynamic ESG means that environmental ratings, social ratings for individual aspects don't have the same relevance in each context. Take the aspect of climate change and carbon emissions and climate change friendly ratings if you want so. So first of all, it's quite obvious that depending on the industry, that is more or less relevant. In some industries you are having a climate change impact and some of which you just don't have it that much. Second, the national context might matter. In the US, there are different views on climate change than in Scandinavia. But also the time matters. It is very important to understand if climate change is in that particular quarter a very important topic, or if it's more a secondary or tertiary topic in that quarter. And for that, we can, for instance, use social media. Social media tells us how much climate change interest is there in every country at any point in time, and thereby condition ESG investment strategies on this dynamic information. To give an example, the Copenhagen Summit, the ratio of attention towards climate change supporters versus fossil fuel supporters, if I might call the counter group like that, is usually 10-1. But prior to Copenhagen, the anti-climate change mitigation campaigners closed that to 5-1, which was an early signal that there would be an issue with Copenhagen. And so you can see how different attention patterns are moving. You can distinguish a short-term trend from a long-term trend.
Den største udfordring investorerne i praksis står overfor, er at omsætte teori til virkelighed, og samtidig overbevise verden om, at ansvarlighed og afkast ikke nødvendigvis strider mod hinanden.
Very important in this debate is a can. What can you do with ESG data if you have sophisticated methods? We are not saying that the average application of ESG data is necessarily more or less successful than any other investment style. And with any investment style, value growth, momentum contrarian, the average fund, the average application will be more or less average. That's no different with ESG. The question is, what are the opportunities? And the question is, how many other people can compete with you on these opportunities once you have the sophisticated methods? And that's where the interesting aspect of ESG comes in. You have new data sets, few people have expertise. If you have the expertise, you have an entry barrier to the market for quite a while for two reasons. One has to master the science of analyzing intangible assets and relating them to financial outcomes, financial market outcomes in particular. B, in many asset management firms, there are superstitions against ESG data, and they will be a natural entry barrier for them to come and compete in your market. So if you compare ESG with, say, other investment styles such as high-frequency trading. High-frequency trading is a nice idea in that sense from a performance perspective, but you very quickly get competition because it's very easy to resemble for competitors. So when you're actually studying the nature of a company, you're studying the character of a company, you will get a good gut sense of which company is more likely to have a scandal and which company is less likely to have a scandal. To take it in an individual perspective, you know your friends, you know your family, you know your colleagues. You know from their character where you think a scandal is likely, and you know where, okay, this is a person who's very unlikely to have a scandal. And interesting research from colleagues shows that if the US government investigates against a firm, those firms which have a reputation of good character get less penalized by financial markets than those firms where the character is already a bit shaky and people think scandals are likely, because financial markets think maybe the government is wrong, and maybe here it's actually the rumor is wrong. So in that sense, ESG information is very much essentially the same as trying to understand the character of the corporation.